I love our community. I love when we have events where we can all be together, be on roundtables like this, whatever, be on panel discussions. And I'm really proud to be in this with you guys.
I agree.
Pleasure to be here. Why don't we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, I'm Wil DeYoung from the Specter Custom Shop.
I'm Roger Sadowsky from Sadowsky Guitars.
Mike Tobias from MTD.
I'm Daniel Tobias from MTD.
And pleasure to be here with my colleagues.
Same.
It's nice to see you guys.
The first question I think we want to talk about is what philosophy or vision guides your instrument design?
The object was to make something that the player didn't have to fight with to express himself. So the balance, the neck carve, the reach for your left hand.
It's the geometry of the bass in general.
Total geometry. And then since my early training was building acoustic guitars, I view the electric as an acoustic first, and the wood quality, the kind of wood, makes the voice. So I've tried to incorporate that all along for the last almost 50 years into everything we do.
Good answer, Mike. I'm very much there with you. I, too, started out 53 years ago building acoustics, and in many ways, it's still my first love.
Yeah.
So I approach solid body basses as acoustic guitars. And so I'm totally on the same page with you guys on that. I came in bass guitar making primarily initially doing repair work and mods and upgrading. And so a lot of my philosophy or design approach stems from addressing the needs of my customers. And back in 1979, when I started my own shop, there were two chapters in the Musicians Directory in New York. It was acoustic bass and Fender bass. And that was really all you could show up in a studio with in those days. First of all, I found the Fender platform easier to modify and upgrade than any other bass, like a Gibson bass. A Gibson bass is it, and there's nothing you want to do to hot rod them, really. And but Fenders gave you a lot of opportunity for that. And so I chose to, in order to gain acceptance amongst the players and the arrangers and the engineers, I chose to work in the Fender's style. And Leo got it awful right the first time, and I just kept raising the bar over the last 45 years.
Cool. Well, I have not been building for 50 years, nor did I design this instrument. But it has been around for 50 years, and Ned Steinberger and Stuart obviously put a lot of effort into this, and my role has really just been to respect that and hopefully improve upon it where I can. In terms of my ethos and my concepts for building and designing really comes from making an instrument that serves the player and gets out of their way. I mean, ultimately it's for making music, and I want anyone to be able to express themselves, same as you said, as easily as possible. And so being in a custom shop, obviously that affords a lot of variability there for someone to tailor the instrument specifically to their style. But really when it comes down to it, I want to make an instrument that gets out of the way. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to think, oh, is this knob in the right place? Is this neck carve the right shape? Is the string too close to the edge of the fretboard that it's interrupting any of these things? Just don't have to think about it. Just make music.
Totally agree.
You guys also mentioned that you're treating it almost as an acoustic instrument. The tonewood debate rages on, and it's certainly a factor in bass guitars as well. What are your takes on that?
Just as a great example of this, if I use the same fret wire and the same strings and the same pickups and electronics, the only variable is that I've changed the wood combination, and I've done this now for 15 years and you for 50-ish.
Yeah.
And there's commonality in wood combinations and how they alter tone, I don't know what the debate really is. I mean, you can overpower things with electronics. That's fine. That clearly like creates a sound, but like all factors come together to make the tone of any instrument. So to say like tonewood doesn't matter is just kind of ridiculous. You don't have to rely on it. You don't even have to agree with me, but like it's definitely something that is a factor when you're building a guitar.
So if every component of the instrument is the same except the wood, and the basses all sound different, then the wood obviously has to make a difference in the voice. That's, I mean, to me, that's
totally agreed. Every time I post something on a forum online or whatever, and I make this point, you get the guy who'll say, well, my Ibanez this actually sounds warmer than my so-and-so that. Apples and oranges are irrelevant in this conversation. Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, out of my shop since 1980, 82, let's say, with basses, I mean, I've made probably 8,000 instruments, and there's no question that you can hear the tonal differences. I personally find that I can hear the difference in the fingerboard easier than the body would. So the typical conversation for what we use is maple versus ebony versus rosewood. I think maple is the brightest and tightest. If you want to sound like Marcus Miller, you need a maple fingerboard. And rosewoods are sweeter and warmer, I find. Yeah. And ebony, I find in the middle, brightness-wise, but it has the most immediate attack, the strongest fundamental, the least amount of bloom.
Yeah, it's a plinky, like the high end of a piano.
Yeah. So, and I can obviously hear those differences. I find body woods, I can't specify I can hear them as much as the fingerboards, but we use ash for, again, that real funk slap tone with a maple board. We tend to like alder a lot with rosewood boards, and I also use a mahogany-like wood called okume from Africa, which is our warmest, roundest wood tonally. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. And it's funny how much this comes up even within the industry. You know, people in our industry that say the wood doesn't matter. And I think while there is no question that in an electric instrument, the electronics make the largest percentage of the difference, I agree that it's silly to say that the wood doesn't matter. And the way that I've found the best to describe it to people, because you know, it's easy for us to sit here and say, yeah, of course we hear the difference. It's obvious. But I think we're more in tune than most people are. And I think a lot of people struggle to hear the differences. And to me, the easiest way to explain it, I think, is the wood becomes like a passive EQ almost, because if you want to think about it scientifically, obviously you pluck a string and it vibrates, and it's only going to be able to vibrate as much as whatever it's attached to is allowing it to vibrate. Yeah. So if you think about energy transfer and the density of wood and things like that, if you have a more porous, less dense wood, it's going to suck more energy out of that string. And where you're going to hear that is in the attack. And so it kind of works like a passive EQ, especially on the front end of the note. And you hear and see a lot of these videos about people that'll say, here's why tonewood doesn't matter. And they'll make a video about putting a bridge and tuners and strings on a plank of wood or on a bench or on a slab of metal, whatever. And then they strum an open chord and they listen to like sustained tone, and they compare sustained tone to sustained tone about all these different variables. But we don't play like that. No. You play like this, and you hear the attack, and that's the front end of the note defines so much of what your sound is. And that's where the wood plays the greatest factor. I think it plays in the most.
I have one other thing to add, is that it doesn't matter what the listener hears. It's all about what the player hears and feels that affects how he attacks his string, how so the feedback to the player is to me the most important thing.
Yes.
I don't care what the audience thinks they're hearing. It's all about the response that the player gets, the feedback the player gets from the instrument.
Yeah, I mean, our job is basically to try to make the sound the guy hears in his head come out of the instrument.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it also is the total combination of what goes on. So if you take an ash body with a maple neck and a maple board, that's one particular voice. If you do an ash body with an ash neck and a maple board, that's a totally different voice. And when I first did it, I found it to be backwards from what I thought would happen. There's more bottom end with an ash neck and a maple board than you would think. The top is still really bright and it's very aggressive. If you take a mahogany bass with a maple neck and a maple board, it's more mid-rangey, doesn't have the bottom end growl. So what we hear as builders, we're tuned to, but it's the total combination, I think, pickups, electronics, if any, and the complete wood combination that makes the voice. And it still all depends on the player's fingers.
Of course, without
Yeah,
a doubt.
definitely.
yeah,
that's why,
that's-
you hear people
yeah.
say all the time you can hand whatever, Marcus or anyone,
Yeah,
the best
he
players in
still
the
sounds
world
like
an instrument.
Marcus,
They still
yeah.
sound like themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question about it. And same with like Verdine White slaps a P bass or with a P
Yeah.
pickup. And so, yeah, of course. I don't know about you guys. I've been using over the last 20 years a lot more roasted maple for necks.
Yeah.
And I hear a difference
Yes.
with that, primarily in the sense that you lose some of that really bright top end.
It sounds like it's been played for 10 years.
Well,
I mean, that's the
It
sales
sounds
pitch
played
on
in
paper.
immediately
that's the
to
sales
us.
pitch. I hear it being less bright.
Yes.
And
I
and
agree.
so if someone came in and saying they want to sound like Marcus Miller, I would not recommend a roast
Yes,
maple.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense too. Just even sitting here acoustically with these basses, not even plugging them in. You know the quality of something. If it sounds good sitting on a couch, you're almost guaranteed it's going to sound good plugged in.
I mean,
Well,
when
the
you
quality's
first
there.
pick
That
up a
was-
bass, you should play it not plugged in.
Totally
Listen
agree.
to it and then
Yeah.
plug it in.
And I've been telling people that since 1979, go to Manny's, get out 3 identical jazz basses or whatever, and the one that sounds the best acoustically is the one you should buy.
Yeah, it's much harder to make an acoustic instrument sound good plugged in than it is a bad acoustic instrument sound
Right.
good plugged in than it is to make a good acoustic instrument sound, I don't know, bad or good, whatever, plugged in.
You're
It's
absolutely
got to
right.
be
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
acoustic. For
So
it.
I dealt a lot with that back in those days in terms of all the mods that I was doing for the session guys. And I basically had the same menu of upgrades, a good fret job, better hardware, shielding the electronics, and installing my active tone circuit. And I noticed that some instruments were just great when I was done, and some weren't that much better than when I started. And so what's the difference here? And the difference for me was the ones that sounded the best were the ones that were the most acoustically resonant, and they also tended to be the ones that were lightest in weight, and that's kind of driven my building approach ever since.
Yeah. Your beginnings were different from mine. You were in a metropolitan area that had a mass quantity of local musicians all doing the same thing. And when I started in Orlando on my own, finally, what started it was a kid coming in saying, I've got this bass and I can't hear the sound out of this bass that I hear in my head. So I was, in a sense, more free to do what I wanted rather than, like for you had
Sure.
to fit in and deal with it. And for me, it was much easier. I could experiment with anything and nobody would come back and say, well, my engineer wants a P bass, do this,
Yeah,
I missed all that.
good.
Which is funny because I also
not
started.
necessarily good, but just a very different beginning circumstance.
Exactly.
I also started working in a repair shop before I went down the avenue of building, and it was a similar thing to where it's, do the best with what you have in front of you. And more often than not, especially if the player wanted something specific, it's like, I can't. I want to do the thing for you, but the limitations of this instrument are what they are.
Yeah.
And, that's what really started it all. It's like, what if I can't do this based on the wood, what can I do? And it really comes to starting from scratch and being deliberate about the wood that you're choosing, being deliberate about how it's carved and grain orientation and weight and density, and all of those things have to be considered from the start. And that's where it came from. Again, from the repair world.
And for me, the point at which I had to do less mods and more building was when the vintage market took off. I used to have guys come in and I'd tell them to go to 48th Street, go to We Buy Guitars, get a nice early 60s Fender jazz bass for $800. Let me do about $700 worth of work. And for $1,500, you had a really good professional quality instrument. But by the mid 80s, the vintage market started to take off, and I realized that everything I was doing on a clean Fender was devaluing it. Yeah. So that's when I said, better now I should just build my own and do less of this kind of upgrading work, unless they were just a real player to begin with.
Yeah.
The instrument, not the musician.
And on that Fender platform, obviously we talk about how often Leo got it right out of the gate. I think a lot of his philosophy was that, it was modular. If the neck gave you issues, you took it off and you could put a new one on. Obviously, that's a neck through. Talk to me about your philosophy on the coupling of a neck to a body and the tonal differences, the good and the bad. I personally like bolt-on necks. I know some people look down their nose at it. I think it's a different animal than a set
It's
neck.
Completely different.
Yeah.
And it's just apples and oranges. It's
it's not better or worse. It's all about personal preference. I mean, that's what all of this comes down to, is personal preference. I think the through line to what we've said in this short period of time already is it comes down to what the player wants to hear, what's in their head, and giving them that avenue to explore that. And neck through, bolt on, set neck are all tools in the toolbox to give a player that. And so I think on paper and historically, the thing that you hear a lot is that neck through has more sustain. That certainly can be true. Again, it all comes down to the woods and the construction and the consideration and everything. But if you do think about it, there is a consistent piece of maple running from top to bottom, and the strings are attached to both ends of that. And you would then think in theory that is going to give you a little more energy transfer and resonance and sustain and allow the string to vibrate for longer. And that's if that's what you want. And if you want a more, quick attack, kind of, the slap sound, the funk thing, I think people generally associate that with bolt-on because of the more immediacy of that attack. And there are variables to all of this stuff. And I think a lot of it comes down to public perception and what people have convinced themselves of, because I think you can get a good sound for really any style out of any of these basses, but it comes down to finding what fits your thing and what's in your head ultimately.
Yeah.
I think in the context of our wood and tone conversation, with a neck through, basically, you've got one piece of continuous wood. So that's essentially the body wood, the way I think about it on a neck through. And neck sets, I think, and bolt-ons probably have more similarity. We fit our necks to our bodies as tight as if we were gluing them in. Yeah. So I think they're closer in terms of how construction affects tone than a neck through.
I would agree. We had a situation a bunch of years ago where a guy who was playing one of my older basses as a neck through complained that it didn't show up in the mix. It was a Babinga body with a Wenji neck through. And I watched him play on tape, and you could see all kinds of stuff going on and not much coming out. And when he switched to a bolt-on, that changed pretty dramatically. So there are a couple of factors in all of that. Aside from the fact that if it pleases the owner, it's fine, whoever is doing the recording has to be willing to try to get the sound out of the instrument. And if the engineer isn't willing to turn some knobs and do some things to let the voice of the bass show up, then that's as much the issue as anything else in terms of tone and voice. I built 2 basses the exact same wood, everything.
Off the same slabs, too.
Off the same slabs, and put soap bars in one and a PJ in the other. And the first one was taken into the studio, and the guy said, I can't get a sound out of that. Regardless of the fact that the soap bars were a split P in the neck and a single coil in the bridge. So the guy came back and took the other bass with the exact PJ, and the guy looks at it and says, oh, that's fine. I can do that. So,
no, I mean, without a doubt, engineers are biased, and part of that again goes to my earlier comment that in many ways it's still a Fender world in the studios.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly affecting his bias there. I'm curious, Michael, to ask you. I mean, we have a long history and friendship together. You transitioned from a set neck or neck through construction to primarily bolt-on. What led you to making that change?
A couple of things, actually. One was the story about the neck through not showing up on tape. And the other was to be as completely different from Tobias as I could get.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
And still make a bolt-on that felt and reacted more like a neck through. So 0 fret instead of a nut, a bolt-on, different spacing, different wood combinations. And it took me a while, actually, to get to where I thought this was the combination, the situation I should stick with. I did make a few neck throughs, and I for some reason, just didn't want to I didn't want to go backwards. I don't ever like to go backwards. When I started making ash necks, someone said, why in the world would you want to reinvent the wheel? Why not? You know, the whole point of this is to bring some kind of innovation without getting completely off the wall. You remember John Page?
Of course. John Page was the head of the Fender Custom.
Yeah, and John
is a brilliant builder.
Yeah, he's a great builder. And somebody asked him what his job was in making new Fenders and new products for Fender. And John said, well, my job is to make things uniquely familiar for new instruments.
I get it. I totally get it. I just saw a thing on Facebook the other day. There's this builder in Asia somewhere, and it's a tele-style instrument like this, finished, and he's flooding here with super glue so that you can make your bolt-on instrument sound like a set neck. And it was one of the most horrific things
there's more than a few of those out there
I've ever seen.
Soldering your strings to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I want a brass
wait,
nut
you mean
so
those
you
things
can
don't
silver
work?
solder my
I gotta go home. Sorry.
All right. Well, that kind of leads us into this next question. How do you balance tradition with innovation in your builds?
That's a tough question, actually.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is what we may consider innovations are micro tweaks.
Yes.
Okay. They're not obvious. Okay. They're not like fan frets, or they're not like whatever, but they're not obvious innovations. We're just constantly, all of us are just always just trying to raise the bar bit by bit, whether it's our electronics or our wood choice or a fret wire or whatever. And so they're often too small for the average person to even recognize as innovations or improvements. But I think we're all doing that every day in what we do.
It's a little different for me taking over from him. I have to keep things that resemble what his vision was and try to respect that and make something new with it. But it's not something that is drastic, as you're saying. It's like spit and polish. You have to keep things to a high standard and change incrementally within that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of innovations in my 50 plus years, I mean, I can count them on one hand, you know, Floyd Rose tremolo, headless instruments. I mean, there aren't that many, you know, fan frets. So that's three. What are the other two?
Active electronics.
Okay.
Graphite and active electronics.
Yeah. So, there just aren't that many. And, but at the same time, we're, like I said, we're micro innovating on a daily basis.
I think just sort of material getting refined as well. Fret wire.
Yeah.
The technology that goes into like how string construction has evolved has changed, our ability to make smaller scale instruments that still provide like a decent bass tone.
What for you is a short scale instrument?
30.
30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we make a 30-inch scale 6-string, and it was, you know, when we first put it together, it was surprising how it came out. But, the
low B was pretty strong.
Yeah. But it's because strings have changed drastically over the years.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, strings play a huge impact on that. Interesting. I want to come back to what Dan was saying earlier, because I'm in a very similar position balancing tradition with innovation, because I'm also tradition at Specter is this. It's not necessarily the Fender thing. It's respecting the integrity of this design that was created in the 70s. So there's tradition in this sense, and then tradition in the larger sense of the bass market, and finding, again, all those really little tweaks. I completely agree with that. It really is very minor details in taking something that is a great design that I do think was a big innovation at the time, because it also coincided right around the same time as active electronics, and Specter became a huge provider of active electronics at the time. And those kind of two things together have defined what Specter has become, and respecting that while also still trying to push forward and offer people new things is a tricky balance. And I see what you're saying. It still has to stay in line with what's come before. But really, little things about refining the taper and refining the neck carve and refining exactly where the pickups are located, and, the placement of the knobs and making sure they're in the right place for your right hand to get easily. Like all these little things that I think we're probably all reevaluating on a daily basis. It's not like we come out with an instrument, we're like, done. Great job, everyone. We did it. We never have to design again. It's like, it's an obsession, I think. And I think we all share. It's like, it's never good enough. It can always be a little bit better. And that's the frustrating yet rewarding part of doing this.
I think what drives the obsession, though, is the change in musical taste of the players. And we have to fit to that. Otherwise, we'd have all been building just a Fender. You've made huge changes in, even though it's a Fender-shaped object, far different instrument from, a neck that had a 1/16 of an inch of slop in the pocket. And
you could fit a nickel.
And was dipped in Fuller Plast before it got painted. And, there's just...
Yeah, I mean, and that's not even a design issue. That's just bad workmanship and choice of materials. But yeah, no, I agree with you there.
You talk about brands like Fender and Gibson, and they're kind of beholden to replicating what they did in their glory days in the 50s and 60s. And so they make reissues and they go, okay, hey, we're making them dead nuts exact replicas of what they did. And so the buying public goes, well, they're not doing anything new. And then they come out with something new that's based, and then they go, well, they're not making them like they used to. You guys aren't really cursed by that. You're not beholden to that. You have a legacy. You've been making these instruments for a long time, but at the same time, you can innovate and not feel like you're going to alienate what people liked about what you made in the first place. Would that be an accurate representation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know about for us.
No?
Actually.
Yeah.
Because Specter has had, I think of three very distinct eras of the original Brooklyn era when basses were all walnut, oil finish, mostly single pickup, but sometimes two pickups, to the Kramer era when Kramer owned Specter. They were doing these very differently. It was a lot more maple body wings, solid paint colors, very different neck carves, than to now the more modern era, essentially from SSD to now Specter again, where things are kind of all of the above, yet still trying to move forward. And there are plenty of people who say, I just, I wish you guys made basses like the Kramer era. I just really want a Brooklyn era bass. And I think that's the beauty of being at the custom shop, because we can do all those things. However, we do see that in our product lineup of all the basses that we make, that we are trying to tailor to the people who really want that. You look at the Euro Classic line, and that is very reminiscent of the Kramer era days with the solid color. It's the look and the geometry and the wood choices and the electronics and everything still come back to that era. So we do struggle with that a bit, which is interesting because we do get to play a lot nowadays and we do get to do new things. And I don't know that we're necessarily alienating anyone by doing new innovations, but I do still feel partially beholden to the past. And again, respecting the history and the tradition of what's come before, and why the brand is still here is because of those. You can call any of them a heyday. You can call today a heyday, but yeah, there are always going to be people who want the thing that you did before, unless you've always done the same thing.
That's the great part about having a custom shop.
Yeah.
You can just do what you want.
Well, and there's a focus on the quality and the consistency too. And I think when we talk about, someone says, "Oh, I have a Fender P bass."
I mean, that's the biggest selling point for any of our instruments, is that consistency is key. And craftsmanship and consistency is what separates all of our stuff from something that's just purely done in a factory.
Sure. But yet we all have factory production lines as well.
But
so
we hold those to a little higher standard sometimes.
So we're all,
and it's your name on the instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, even if it's made offshore, you have to take pride in that and go, this is still a very accurate representation of our ethos of what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, everything that comes into our shop. It's inspected, frets taken care of. If need be, it's restrung with US strings. It's intonated and set up. You guys do the same thing. I mean, I don't do that at this point, but yeah, but it's not out of the realm. I mean, you used to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you have a distributor who does
right.
it. But it's still done. There's far more QC into what we all do that comes from outside of our shops than actually maybe even some of the production lines in the U.S.
Without a doubt. And I personally train all of the guys at the factories that I work with, and they're technical guys, and I'm still totally involved with all of that stuff, whether it's something that we make in Germany or something we make in China. I'm still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of trust you place in someone else to execute that vision. But ultimately, it doesn't matter where the instrument's coming from. If we're prototyping or if we're doing QC or whatever, like any of these new instruments, I'll open it up and I'm not looking at it thinking, okay, does this instrument do the thing for the price? It doesn't matter. it's got to be right, and I'll hold it to the same standards as any other instrument. It's got to be the best.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because I think the buying public now, we're spoiled. I mean, when you look at the average, let's say, offshore guitar or bass now, you can't afford to make something really sloppy. There's so many choices, and there's so many well-made instruments out there that you have to be on your game. You're absolutely right. I mean, look at what Squire has become. You know, just an example. Or any of these guitars we have here, most of these are imports. The quality, the fret ends, the way the nut is cut, the electronics, they're all really good. It's hard to find a bad one.
You have to be.
There have been times in the past where some of the big companies' import instruments were better than what they were making domestically.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Look what Japan
especially-
did in the 70s.
Exactly.
It kicked everyone's butt. Yeah.
And that's where I started doing offshore production, was in Japan. And, following the Asian manufacturing path, I mean, it went from Japan to Korea to Indonesia to China, Vietnam, now, India. It's all over the place. But I think the important thing for all of us is regardless of the price points that we're at with our import instruments, we want it to be the best bass for the money, and that's the bottom line. Well, here's an appropriate question. How much input goes into designing your offshore basses? I can start. I mean, I want my offshore basses to be exactly like my New York City custom shop basses. I mean, I want those differences to be as small as possible. I think for me, it's more a matter of limiting choices than diluting quality.
Absolutely.
So, when you do a production line, I mean, you design the instrument and you have a variety, and that's what you make. Whereas we're in the position with our custom shops, we can offer way more options. The design for me is the same, whether it's my Metro Express coming out of China or my Metro line coming out of Germany. The design is the same. It's that simple. And I really can't even think of areas where we cut corners other than having fixed specs for a particular model. And, that's it.
Yeah. For us,
We offer upgrades in hardware and electronics.
Yeah, but still, the amount of our original design that goes into the instrument is everything but the peg head. Body shape's the same, pickup placement, even though they're different style pickups. The neck carve, and I did not copy the peg head because I wanted it to be obvious it was not a U.S. instrument. There's a builder way back that we all know who did exactly, he had exactly his bass made, and it was a third the price, and you could buy his exact parts and put them in it, and you would have for $1,500 visually and somewhat sonically an instrument that was $5,000. And he ended up putting himself under because his import undermined the U.S. instrument. And I didn't want to try to fall into that situation. So the bass for us is everything the same except the peg head. And it's obvious at that point that it's not a U.S. bass. We've also run into some weird counterfeiting problems from overseas where people would photograph a U.S. bass, Photoshop my signature and something else on
They were
it.
screen printing our signatures in the back of Alibaba Express bases.
Yeah, and selling them for $350 to $500 each.
Me too.
Yeah. And, it's just, I don't appreciate that stuff. And I just didn't want to get caught. We've had enough. We also had stuff out of Southeast Asia where they were building fake MTDs. And like not putting truss rods in them or anything. Had the slot in the cover, but there's no truss rod. Yeah. And you could buy this wonderful handmade MTD bass for, $200. It's
the intellectual property thing came after we guys got started.
Yeah.
And it's part of me is embarrassed how litigious our industry has gotten by a few individuals that we all know.
Yeah.
But I think we all have our headstocks trademarked. And that's probably the most that and our logos and our names.
That's about all you can trademark.
That's about
anymore.
all you can do.
In the fashion industry, it's just your logo.
The other side of it is intellectual property on a certain level is worthless unless you have the budget to defend
back it up. Yeah, absolutely.
it. And I have one of my proteges who designed a much better tremolo system for like jazz masters. He got a patent on it, and now he's got competitors. And his lawyers advised him, you can't step into this unless you're willing to spend $2 million. And I mean, it's a shame that we all have to deal with this stuff. Is basically
also
all
the
I'm trying to
speed.
say.
The speed of it is now changing too because of people sharing designs for CAD. It's going to be a new lane for intellectual property lawyers to go down soon.
Sure, I think wasn't Roger's stuff on there too?
Oh that Beanstalk took care of that for
There was a guy who was selling CAD drawings of our bases and yours and some others.
I'm not aware of this guy.
And well, luckily he also did that for somebody with a lot more money than us.
Yes.
So it all kind of got taken care of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But
he was selling them on Etsy, was it?
Yeah, he was selling CAD designs on Etsy.
CAD designs on Etsy. Build your own MTD.
And that's one of those things you don't think about. Like, I'm going to become I'm going to be a luthier. I'm going to get into this for the love of the instrument, and then you realize how often you need to have a lawyer involved on all of this stuff. Unfortunately.
The hardest part about the music industry is the industry part.
Good point. Yeah.
For what we do for import instruments, very much in line with what you guys said in terms of it needs to be the same as what you're building in the US to a certain degree, in the sense that you want to deliver the same essential instrument, the same experience. You want to deliver that experience of your brand at all price points. And that's very much my ethos when it comes to it too. And Specter has 3 more or less tiers at the moment. There's the custom shop, there's the Euro series, and then the other series that encapsulates the ethos, the dimension, the pulse, all of those other Asian-made instruments. And while the core design of the Specter, hasn't changed in the sense that the outline of the instrument, the curved body, those things are very much there. Like we said earlier, there's always room for improvement and refinement, and we're holding these instruments to a high standard. So there's new things coming, and you'll see that approach as the years go on from Specter, that we're always trying to refine and improve and deliver that same experience, because that's ultimately what it comes down to, I think, is giving the players the experience of your brand at a different price point.
Yeah, totally agree. I always try to keep my shop small enough that I was primarily dealing direct with players. But I also realized at certain points that there were just a lot of people who just can't afford what I was making.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how can I bring what I bring to the table to various people's budgets, but maintain what I'm known for as much as possible. And but I had an epiphany back in 1982 that as much as I love making instruments, when I'm done, that instrument can't love me back. And I realize all the joy for me, all the personal satisfaction, the thing that keeps me going every day was my relationship that I had with the person who was buying and playing that instrument.
Yeah.
And so that was always my intention, was to keep my business at a level where I could be dealing direct with the musician more than the buyer of a music store. But again, once we get into production lines, that
goes away.
Story changes a bit. But I still, as much as I don't want to be spending all day on my computer answering emails, it's still just as important to me to answer that email from a guy who has one of my production bases as something we make out of our own shop. And again, we are the face of the brand, and we have to continue to be that and represent that.
Absolutely.
I think there's also a thrill for any of us as players to speak to someone who makes the instrument. There is that feeling of like, wow, they actually took the time to answer my question.
I'm always surprised when people are surprised that you can talk to us. It's like, that's our job.
What
Yeah.
are you
You're
doing
supposed to
answering
talk
the
to
phone?
us.
You'd be surprised how many people don't share that philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it can be too much, but you get to a certain point where you have people you hire to help you with it. If you're in charge of it, where it's going to be the end decision anyway. So you're going to get around to the information and you can get back to somebody. But like, our job is to speak to the player and do what they want. I mean, it's
Well said, Daniel.
essentially, this is still a service that we're providing.
Yeah, this is absolutely a service.
So
business,
like, I don't get I don't get not speaking to the player or like thinking that you're above it.
It's also something that we love. Like, clearly
Yeah.
none of us got into this
Well,
because we
you
wanted
can't-
to get
you can't-
rich. Like, we love doing this.
I
We
didn't
love
want
talking
to work in an
about.
office.
We love.
I didn't want to do
It's
business.
also,
I just wanted.
you can't get any better at this by existing solely by yourself without
Yeah.
listening to other people, your peers, and especially the people that are going to be purchasing an instrument from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm still the first one to grab the phone when it rings at the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really where all the joy for me comes from. Yeah, sometimes you get a difficult customer, but, I always wanted to hang a shingle that said Sadowsky guitars, custom builds, repairs, and psychotherapy.
That's not bad.
And I think one of the things, especially doing repair work back in the day, one of the first things that I realized is the first thing I have to do is establish a level of trust with the customer.
Yeah.
Make them feel comfortable, let them be clear my job is to serve them, take care of them. And, I never hard sell my instruments in any way. Basically, for all of us, the joy comes from serving people and making a difference in their lives through what we do. And relationship a person has with their instrument is a very intimate relationship. And so I can't make light of how important that contribution is that we make to people. It's really significant. I remember back in the day with repair customers, I mean, they had only had bad experiences with repair shops, and to get them to trust me and feel comfortable, that was the first thing I had to deal with when they walked in the shop.
I agree.
Well, it's funny too. The easiest way to identify a good musician in a room when you're playing with other people, it's not so much their technique; it's that they're listening, and
Exactly.
you're listening. And that's part of what Wil said before. We want to get better at this. Well, if you listen to the people who are buying your stuff, that's one way to get better real fast.
You bet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, another point that you touched on briefly is just the sharing aspect of it. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do, is whether I hear a great new album or, play a new set of strings or whatever it is. Like, I want to share that with people. And I say, you got to listen to this record I just heard. It's so good. I can't wait for you to experience the thing I just experienced. And that goes all the way back to before I ever even started repairing instruments, let alone building them. Is I took an instrument that I was playing to someone and they did something and it made an impact. And so I wanted to share that and say, wow, you should get your instrument set up. Look at what a difference this made. And I changed my pickups. You guys should change your pickups. I just tell everyone. And that totally carries through till today. Every aspect of this, I just want to share it with people and say, look at what you can do, can hear, can feel, can play, all of those things. That's just what I love to do. So that carries through into instrument design, customer service, all of those things. It's just wanting to share all these amazing things that are happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. If I'm new to the bass world and want to buy my first bass, what sort of questions do I need to ask in order to pick the right bass for me?
That's tough.
I would say the very first question is, what's your budget? Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any reason for anyone to overextend themselves today with a variety of instruments out there. So depending on someone's budget, I'll either recommend my Metro Express or my Metro Line or my custom shop. So I think that's the first thing I would do. I would also encourage people to go to a good music store and play as many different basses as you can, and definitely see what you seem to connect with
what
better.
fits your body.
Yeah.
And then what kind of music do you play? What are you interested in? Because unfortunately for all of us, there's not one bass that does absolutely everything.
Of course not.
Well, actually, that's
Fortunately.
fortunately.
Yeah.
So that, there are multiple bases owned by the same person. But the kind of music you play, what you're interested in, how it fits you physically. If you're small, you don't want a giant bass that sticks out too far to the left so your shoulder falls off. Aside from the ergonomics, though, what you can afford, what your goals are, and where you want to go with this after you've bought your first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That comes down to going to a great music store. I think has a huge
Some
impact.
selection, yeah.
Someone, if it's your first instrument and you don't know anything about, there's 70 basses hanging on the wall and you don't know the difference between any of them. Having someone there to help guide you and narrow the field and ask you those questions. It should be not necessarily, I need to figure out what all the questions are that I need to ask, but it's also finding someone that will
ask the right
me
questions.
the right questions.
And not force you into something that they have a special.
Definitely.
on-off
Someone that
goal
wants
that
to
day.
share their knowledge, someone that wants to help you find the right thing. And then you will find when you hold something, you're like, oh, something feels different about this. It fits a little better. Or, no, I don't like the way this makes my right arm sit. All of those things will be fairly natural. You'll know pretty quickly on the ergonomic side.
Yeah.
But yeah, finding someone that can help lead you to the right place, especially sonically, is going to be very
And
important.
I always ask them, are you studying with someone? Because often
That usually is a good-
their instructor
Yep.
can be a very good guide
Yep.
into what direction to go to. I don't know if you remember this, Michael, but at that very first roundtable we did with bass player in Nashville, I remember saying that all of us have a group of people who think
we're the best
we
bass.
make the best bass on the planet. And there's enough of everybody for all of us, that we don't have to feel in competition with each other.
No.
And,
That's absolutely correct.
And anybody who feels competitive with us or anybody else, they shouldn't be doing this to begin with. Okay.
It's also
It's a really
small world.
It's a small community. 98% of us are totally willing to share everything we know and do with each other. And I love our community. I love when we have events where we can all be together, be on roundtables like this, whatever, be on panel discussions. And I'm really proud to be in this with you guys.
I agree.
Yeah,
And I'd
same.
be willing to bet that most of our customers each own one of our basses.
Yeah.
Regardless of, what they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to thank,
Thank you
everybody
guys for everything.
for supporting what we all do together. And again, I personally love the idea that we can all make a contribution to people and serve them in the way that we're able to serve them.
Well, on behalf of AMS, we're proud of your brands. We love having them here, and having you guys here to talk about it, to put a face on it, really makes a difference. So thankfully, some of those questions were mine, so I appreciate it.